Uh-oh.
Knowledge by itself is not power. It holds the potential for power if we use it as a guide for action. Edward G. Griffith. Beware the head of the snake. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for entering the Tiger's Den.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for spending your time in the Tiger's Den. We will try not to waste it. It is Wednesday, June 14th, 2023 AD. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, a very special guest has honored the Tiger's Den. The very best of antelope and prairie dog will be served. Our current landscape has become a smoke-filled room, filled with shiftless, internally blind, corrupt garbage eaters known as politicians, special interest groups, and megacorps, and many, many more insidious, sulfur-covered creatures feeding from the trough of corruption provided by the Federal Reserve. With their pestilence-laden tentacles contaminating every form of life with corruption, lies, and social engineering, the bloated central government, hollow in moral standing, has become an illegal and rogue creature, creating a carnival of chaos and corruption. Central planning has failed. The empire built by the central bank is collapsing, rotting from the head down. The central bank will remain. Even if the empire collapses, the central bank will just start the process all over again. Ladies and gentlemen, inflation is rising. The war drums are pounding, and the central planners are slithering. We have a pearl button bangled Billy of a show tonight, though, for you, ladies and gentlemen. Angry Tiger is here with someone who can bring the information by the pound, ladies and gentlemen. So hold on, because you have the tiger by the tail. With us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, our very special guest. 10,000 leagues under the information seas where you shall find her, bringing to the surface the facts and figures the central planners so desperately are trying to hide. A courageous warrior shining light on the truth. Ask authoritarian's description of a bad day, and they shall say her name. Jabba the Hutt has a bounty out on her. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to welcome the host of Deep Dives with Monica Perez. Monica Perez, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for coming into the Tiger's Den.
That, Tiger, was the best intro I have ever gotten. I loved it. You even threw 10,000 leagues. Why haven't I thought of that one yet?
I don't know. I like
it. It's poetic.
I get so lucky to talk to people like you that I want to honor you guys with a great introduction. I happen to have a flair for it, so you know that's my gift for you. You know, to come on the show. So basically, you know, I'll be honest with you. I had not heard about you until the Twitter sphere, and I was impressed when I picked your show up about how much you know about a lot of stuff. But before we get going, we're gonna get into you here. This is gonna be great because I'm gonna pick your brain and ask you some questions. Is that all right?
Yes, that's fine.
Excellent. Okay. We always start the show off, unless it's like a special episode, with a quote about the Federal Reserve. So here's one, and it starts off like this: there are few historians who would challenge the fact that the funding of World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War was accomplished by the Mandrake mechanism through the Federal Reserve System. And that, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is one of my favorite authors, G. Edward Griffin. You know, everybody knows him. He is a staple in the community that we run around in. But what do you think of that quote?
I think it's absolutely true. And I was thinking, I was just having a conversation with Keith Knight of the Libertarian Institute, who is doing work on war. He's like flipped the adage, the libertarian adage, and he said, health is the war of the state, something like that. Anyway, state is the health of war, something like that. And we were talking about
war is the health of the state. Yeah,
I know, but he flipped it, so I don't want to misquote it.
Oh, okay.
He did something a little different with it. But I in that conversation just a couple of days ago, I was saying, like, if you look at the establishment of the Federal Reserve, I think it probably was intended to finance World War I without people noticing. And that's when you just see that exponential All right. The way it comes out, I did this thing with my son. He was like in second grade and he had to do, I don't know what the project was. It was about something milk or whatever. I had him look up the price of milk in 1800, the price of milk in 1900, and the price of milk in 2000. And that kind of data is actually much harder to find than you would think. And I know why, because I found it. Maybe it was 1890, something like that. The actual dollar price of milk in dollars was lower at the end, like in 1900 than 1800, which means that the productivity gains of milk production was accruing in part to the consumer. And at the same time, wages were slightly up, which means that they were also getting some of the productivity gains in the increased wages. So, but if you look at it after the Fed, it's out of control. It's like 10 cents versus $6.
Right.
And
Right.
wages are not 600 times, or 60 times as much as they were then.
No.
Wages did not. So it's really what Keynes was all about. Was when he talks about sticky wages, he's saying you have to have inflation or people will notice that you're reducing their wages. Wages are sticky. They don't like it. So if you inflate it, they're blinded by the numbers. He didn't say it exactly like that, but it's very close to that. Like I can find quotes that like,
No, that's yeah. You broke it. You distilled it very well for the viewers, and that's what we like to do here. Is we call it working man's English because they make financial talk this big, complicated, mystical thing. And you know what? I'm a normal guy. I don't have a formal education. I have not been to any universities or even colleges. I've trade colleges and stuff like that, and actually community college just for theology because it was very interesting to me, just because I wanted to learn about it. But when you look at this stuff, I looked at it and from from my perspective in life, I'm like, what a con, what a scam this central bank thing is. And then I started looking into it deeper and deeper. I think I started in 2008 with the Ron Paul campaign. I liked what this guy was saying. It made sense. And then that opened up my eyes, but that's enough about me. So you are a special guest. And I want to know basically, number one, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to where you're on my podcast talking about libertarian ideas and the Federal Reserve and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, I'm going to do this as comprehensive and concisely as possible, if it's possible for those two things to live in the same sentence. I'm like my origins are kind of humble. I'm the youngest of 9 and really had my father, I don't know if he got this way or he started out this way or what, but his general rule was that the boys would have to be breadwinners and they could go to college if they wanted to, and the girls just shouldn't because it would be a waste. It's like a friend of mine said, it's like pouring water in a shoe. Educating a woman is like pouring water in a shoe. Either the water runs out or you ruin the shoe.
Wow.
It took me so long till recently. I heard that like 20 years ago. It took me so recently. I was like, oh, I get it. Either it doesn't work, but if it works, it ruined, like then you're ruined. And in a way, it kind of did ruin me because I fell for this nonsense. So I convinced, I dropped out of high school because I was kind of believed what he was saying. And then my mother got upset. So I went to community college and I transferred to Harvard because that was one like, well, if you go to Harvard, it's probably worth it, except for your turnaround.
Wow. I'm talking to a Harvard person. Holy moly.
Yeah,
wait a minute. Okay. Yeah. So we have something when we mention Harvard or the Federal Reserve. You hit the gong. Did you hear the gong? Yeah, we usually hit the gong. Okay, so now go on.
Okay. So I'm writing something down for later. So I made the logical argument. He's like, not only so college isn't worth it. You're really better off taking that money and like opening a business, even though he was a struggling businessman this whole life. It gave him heart attacks when he finally was successful. He had heart attacks and lost everything. And I don't know why he was trying to tell me to do that kind of thing. But in any case, I was like, well, what if I went to Harvard? He's like, maybe. And I did get a scholarship to Harvard. And
wow.
And he still was upset because he thought I would come out a socialist, which was stupid because by the time somebody is 18 years old, by then, or I was 20 by then.
So he was conservative leaning.
He was a traditional conservative. He was a
Like
trad cat. I called him libertarian, but he didn't.
not a
He
John Bircher, but like a
Well, he might have been a John Bircher, but they got like bigoted and stuff. So he would read, like, he liked William F. Buckley. Like they
okay,
liked
gotcha.
National
That's
Review.
all you got at Buckley's all you need to say.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
but Buckley's a CIA agent, and
Right.
to my father's credit, he didn't know he was a CIA agent. But after a while later in life, he was just like, "There's something wrong with that guy,"
It's
and
not as
he
bad
turned
as like
away.
Hannity today, but like in the same kind of like realm of
I
like
know my mother falls for the Hannity thing. It's so stupid. But anyway, so yeah, he thought I would come out a socialist, which is in I think by the time a kid is 20, if there's any chance of that, especially if they're raised by a non-socialist, is just the expression he used. So I ended up going to Harvard for a couple of years. I went as a junior and a senior. They gave me a scholarship. I got the degree, took it, you can't take that away from you. It was an extremely painful experience. That's when I coined my lifelong the mantra of my life, which I sadly have had to pass on to my children who use it, which is they may have to carry me out on a stretcher, but I'm not quitting. And
nice.
that's how I got through Harvard. It's how I went to Stanford and law school and business
Wow.
school. And the business school wasn't bad, but the law school, I mean, they almost carried me out on a stretcher. It was a very emotionally painful. I'm not even talking about like the work, and Harvard actually ended up with good grades, but as law school, I didn't. I figured it out at the end. You just have to memorize so much stuff. I always thought I could wing it. But anyway, yeah, it was quite emotionally painful. I don't know why. I just couldn't.
Monica, you don't have to answer this question, but I want to ask you, what did your dad say to you after you graduated all that? I mean, I'm stunned that you're telling me all this. I'm like, what a great story.
Yeah, I
Right?
have an amazing story. Yeah, I know. And then at a certain point, people will be like, "Well, anybody who went to Harvard and Stanford is a Fed." But if you look at like the lack of success that I've experienced at the hands of yeah, I mean, you just whatever. I mean, how are you going to know the Antichrist? Well, he's going to say stuff that is wrong. You have discernment. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But what did my father say? So he knew I wasn't a socialist. He liked that. I mean, he just always a neighbor. We had a Jewish neighbor who was horrified that my father was not impressed that I got into Harvard. And he like consistent with the Jewish culture in New York, especially, he really respected education, this guy, Mr. Lycan. And he came over and he said to my dad, he was like, "You don't know how hard it is to get into Harvard. Like, you should be proud of her." And my father's like, I didn't need to hear from him that I should be proud of you, but I did make reservations at like the nicest restaurant in town, and I'm taking you out to dinner tonight. And this guy ended up in his later years being a truck driver, had no extra. Like I was ashamed. Like I didn't even want him to take me to a nice restaurant, but he did know it was something to be proud of, and he was proud of me because I then became an investment banker, and people said nice things about me at my wedding and everything, but he really wanted me to, he felt like a woman's place is in the home. And it's funny because I never really took that seriously at all, like not even a little bit. I laugh in his face. And I used to get like great, obviously have to have pretty good standardized test scores to get into schools like that. Like I obviously was somebody who was going to add value academically if I could sit behind a desk. And so I had kids. And even though, so my first child has Down syndrome, and I didn't end up working like as an investment banker or anything like that after he was born. But even though I was basically home, I did radio stuff, I did this kind of stuff. It was more flexible and it just made no money at all. Actually, probably cost money at the end. But the damage was done in that, and I'm going to blame society, which I don't normally blame society. I'm going to put it in quotes. I don't even know what it means, but I had it in my mind that being a mom was not a job. So I just thought it was an afterthought because they tell you, you are trained. And to say I don't know, like when you have guidance counselors, when you go to school, whatever you do, like women, girls, like they can do this, they can do that. Yes, they can. You can do whatever you want. But the idea that you could have a full-time career and have kids without really having to think too hard about that, I think put in my mind this idea that it wasn't in itself like a full-time job that you had to think about being good at.
Right.
So I kind of took it as an afterthought and like kind of occupied myself with other things. I was home. I was always home and it was important. And a lot of this stuff was kind of distorted because having a child with Down syndrome, you are really just making sure everyone's staying alive. Like you're not really doing the greatest job of teaching them nuance. And like I probably would have learned how to like make sauerkraut a lot sooner if I didn't have my head outside the home base.
Right.
Like my father would be much, much prouder of me having learned how to make sauerkraut, you know?
I
And
get
and
what you're saying.
and he didn't live long enough to hear me on the radio. Like that he would have to hear a libertarian on the radio. I mean, he was enough of a libertarian to like recognize he liked Ron Paul. He loved Ron Paul. He gave to Ron Paul's congressional campaigns in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to understand that to get to that question. But so he would have he would have been amazed that someone could be on the radio and cite those kind of principles, and that it was me. Like he just would have. I think he would have like died and gone to heaven, but he died and went to heaven before, so he doesn't know. Well, he's watching, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
anyway, I can
Wow.
keep telling you everything about my story, but I'll just like breathe and you can
That
decide.
yeah, let me give you let me be a gracious host here.
Yeah,
You are absolute that's such a story.
I
You're
know,
a
it's
trooper.
amazing.
I mean,
Yeah.
you are a trooper. My mom worked with Down
Oh,
syndrome
yes, Down
children. She taught them
Cool.
you know, they would come over and she taught a class for them. You know, and I remember being little and them coming over and teaching a class to them and all that. And I remember, you know, I'm like, why are you so nice to them? Why are you nice? Because I was little, right? I didn't understand. I didn't even recognize anything was wrong with them. They were just, you know, older kids to me. You know, she's like, there's, you know,
Yes,
they're
super
special.
cool.
God made them special. You know,
Yeah,
I remember her
they're
saying
saints.
that. And then I know a few people actually now that have some kids that have Down syndrome or some other issues going on. My grandson, he has
You have a grandson?
I have a grandson and a granddaughter. He has a little bit of he's autistic a little bit
Oh,
from I believe from the vaccines. But yeah, but my granddaughter, she's doing great. She's vaccine free. We're just trying to find some doctors that will see them without, you know, them being
yeah.
vaccinated.
You know,
That's
you
rough
just
to do right now,
have to learn a lot about health and try to avoid.
but that is not health advice by any means to anyone
I
listening or
know, I
watching. I'm not
know.
a doctor and neither is Monica, but
Nope.
um
That is true.
so here's a question for you. So what made you start the podcast itself? I mean, you did radio. Did you do
Mhm.
that for a while or
Yeah, and I didn't mean to do it at all. I was actually studying to be I wanted to get a CFA, which I got, a chartered financial analyst. It's like a credential you need to be working a hedge fund or whatever. And I was home with kids and I was bored and I was like, let me just start accumulating credentials so when I can go back to work, I'll have something to do. And it was such a challenging experience, made my mind go on fire. So every time, like anything I paid attention to, like I was just in such an analytical mode. And that's when I discovered anarcho-capitalism and I completely embraced it. And I just happened to meet a radio producer, told her, I would just explain to her like Hans Hermann Hoppe and everything. And she went nuts for it, got me on the radio. And then after a long time, 8.5 years, I was on there. The company was being sold. And I kind of had a feeling, I just didn't think anybody would go for it besides this particular program director who was leaving when they took over. The new people took over and COVID broke and whatever. But even before COVID, I was like, I'm going to prepare for the worst. And so my sidekick at the time on the air, Brad Binkley, and I just wanted to do a daily show that was like radio because I had been on the weekends on the radio training for a daily show. It took my predecessor 13 years to get a daily show. And it was fine with me because I didn't want to I wanted to wait till my kids were out anyway, but I knew it was never going to happen. So I said, let's just do it on a podcast. Like just do the news every single day and have it out by the time people are in their cars in the evening. And then they don't have to listen to that propaganda. So It was called The Propaganda Report. And that show was the Drive Time News Blast. And it really scratched that itch for people. And especially it was like 3 years ago. So there's been like a proliferation of all sorts of podcasts since then. But that, I think, and being right before lockdown, when we were the only ones who were really talking about like what we really thought was going on. And because I'd had this big radio following, or like some radio following, which is bigger than most podcasts, that I had a lot of people just kind of slide in because I had been telling them like this lockdown's going to be 2 years, not 2 weeks. And, I just had some credibility there. And then, and it worked. It was very effective, and it was definitely perfect for that time. And then it just got too much. It was too difficult to maintain. And I had to stop doing it every day, which makes me like want to cry, but it's okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Because if
No.
it was something of real value, and you rarely do you really have that terrible choice. And the same thing with investment banking. Like I moved to get married out of New York. I was a high yield investment banker, and my boss was like, "You don't understand. This job is so hard to get. Like you have this job. Like what are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm getting married." He's like, "Bring him here. He could be a kept man. You can keep him." And I was just like, "But I'm the one who's going to have the kids, and he has to have a job he likes." And it just,
You
so
know,
there are just a couple of times in life when you have to make a really horrible, terrible, like a choice between two goods, which I guess is better than a choice between two bads.
I have a philosophy. It probably doesn't help me a lot financially, right? But this is my philosophy. It helps me though. I'm very happy, and I think you catch this a little bit with what you just said. Your most valuable commodity isn't your gold or your silver or your Bitcoin or your fiat dollars. Your most valuable commodity is your time, and you have to make decisions. Every decision you make is going to be, how am I spending this time? This time and it's not quantifiable. You don't know how much of it you have. So every decision that you make is important every second. Now you can't micromanage. Life happens, of course, right? I'm a student of the human action, right? I understand this, right? But the thing is that you have to spend your time where it's most important, right? Where it's most value for yourself, or your, like apparently you're a little bit selfless because you were thinking about your husband, and he has to have a job to make him happy. You have your kids, right? And your time is more valuable to them than it is for this big job that this guy's like, "Hey, you got this big job
It was
here."
just filthy lucre. And boy, did I like filthy lucre.
Yeah,
I really liked it. I like living the high life, but I knew I wanted to have kids, and I knew that I would just, it's not like earlier I said that I undervalued motherhood, but I knew I couldn't be an investment banker and have kids. That I knew. Probably because my father drilled it into my head, but yeah.
And do you think that was really it, or do you think that was because you assessed the situation and said, this isn't going to coincide with me having a family?
I just didn't want, I knew I wanted to have kids, and I knew I didn't want somebody else to raise them.
Gotcha. Very good. Yeah, that's the state, and
So,
that brings us to
but I still
JC.
don't feel like I did a great job. Like I thought just being there was enough, but I probably could have been better at it if
Listen,
I tried harder.
I was a very young parent. I don't feel like
Apparently.
I did a great job. My son, I'm very proud of him. He's proud of himself. He went from a very bad place in life to very successful family man now, and
Right.
that's and I
That's
did
all
what
you
I could.
want.
You will watch your children. Do you have more than one? More than
Yes, I have the one who has, I have 3 kids, one of each. I have a guy with Down syndrome, I have a girl, and I have a boy, and they're all like almost the same age.
so,
Like they're
so
all like 1, 2, 3.
you're going to get to a point, Monica, when you're watching your children raise your children, and they're passing on those values that you passed on to them, or you're,
Yes.
and to see that, I can't describe to you the treasure that is to see that, and I'm young and I'm lucky I'm seeing it at my age, and I'm like,
Yeah,
wow,
that's
you
cool,
know,
and I had somebody say to me recently, and it really took it to heart, and I've been watching out for it because we had a really tough time during lockdown. My kids were all teenagers. They were all in high school. They were in new schools. It was terrible, terrible. LA was the worst fucking place to be, and I was, like, worried and just was not good, and somebody said to me, and I was complaining that I should have gotten ahead of it. I don't know why. I was like I didn't have enough discipline. And I just, what was wrong with, how did I not see this coming? And a really cool, smart, older, like parent, older than I, and said, you will see what you modeled for your children is what they're going to remember. So when the chips are down, they're going to remember what you did.
Yes.
They're not like your parenting and what you said is not what matters the most. It's their modeling behavior. Then, of course, I had to think about like all my cocktail hours, and I was like,
Right.
oh shit, that's worse.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Believe me, you could have not have done. You're not going to do any worse than I at the making the mistakes I did. So don't worry. But hey, real quick, you said something about leaving your kids to strangers, and JC. I think JC might be one of your viewers.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
not sure, but
Hey,
thanks
JC.
for viewing us in the
For
Tigers
sure.
Den here, JC. But she says inquisitive people will inevitably seek out the truth on their own. This is why public schools try their hardest to beat the curiosity out of them. That's I agree with that 100%. Great comment. Intelligent viewers I see as well, just like over here in the Tigers Den.
I always had the smartest callers on radio. That's what they said. Because at first they were like, you're too intellectual. And then they heard the callers and they were like, wow. And then they
Right.
also said that you would never really get much of the Black community in Atlanta, which was half Black. I was like, you're abandoning half of the market. And because I was speaking like truth about the bullshit at the, sorry, I'm using vulgarity and you're not. So excuse me. But so about like just don't like Democrat Republican nonsense. I got so many viewers and demographics that they had abandoned. But anyway, so I love my the crowd that I've built up over the years.
People have a lot of misconceptions because of the propaganda machine. They're using we have a natural instinct to be tribalistic, right?
Mhm.
If you walk into a place
Absolutely.
and everybody has brown hair and brown eyes,
Yeah.
right? And you're comfortable. If you walk into a place and everybody has blonde hair, blue eyes,
Yeah.
you're going to feel a little uncomfortable.
Atlanta.
Right? And that's just natural.
Street in Atlanta. I just told my daughter, I was like, you were the only brown haired girl on your soccer team. And she's like, I know, I loved it. And I was like, yeah, that's because that now it's okay. But like, in the day.
So they use that against us though, right? It's a shame because you watch the general public and they're in this haze and you get frustrated. Like I was listening to one of your podcasts and you had mentioned that the Skull and Bones and how Alex Jones had that lady on who came out with the list. I can't remember
Charlotte
her name.
Iserbyt.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And that's why we need people like you. You're the memory banks.
Yes, I have memories. Yeah, that's good.
You
I'm good at
do. Yeah, outstanding. And you were talking about that. See, and here's the thing. This is what I like about your work is there's two things. The first thing is you say things in a way that are are very hard for the normal aggregate to swallow, correct? But you say them in a way that is calm, precise. You explain it in an intellectual way. So you give all the NPR intellectuals and all the intellectuals that they have all over the place that have gone to Harvard, right? And they wouldn't throw dirt at me. Oh, you're an auto mechanic with a podcast? I'm not coming on and talking to you. All right, dude, whatever. I mean, I don't know. I don't judge you by the way, because you went to Harvard. Maybe I should be not like you because
I know.
that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for not judging me for that.
No, absolutely. No. Well, you watch you obviously seen a little bit of my work or check me out. I'm nobody, right? So it's like, it's cool.
Well, you're a friend of Chris's, so that's
yes.
me.
Chris Graves, the mastodon of researchers. Actually, he had a comment up here I'm going to throw up there, but this is the thing. He likes chatting with you. That's for sure. But yeah, I'm glad that he was able to make this happen because he knew that we could talk about stuff.
Yeah, but I will say the reason I throw my credentials around, which was, it's bad. It's like bad manners. Like I went to Harvard, but I found when I was on the radio that it was harder to dismiss me as a crackpot if I, had those credentials that were in there. It's like when you quote the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal and say, look, I'm not saying that that's a source I consider to be credible. It's a source you consider to be credible. And that's why I'm quoting it for you, because it's proving my point and you think it's credible. You think Harvard's credible. I was, someone was explaining to me a girl in our neighborhood was going to Yale. And I was like, oh, that sucks. I liked her. And like, that, and I'm not being rude about Yale or whatever. I'm just saying, like, I literally had that thought. I was like, I guess it's, and I had the follow up thought, like maybe 20 years from now she'll come back around, but right now I'm sure she has stars in her eyes, and just like, whatever, like camera paper, whatever she goes, like she's going to just absorb it because it's like magical. But of course, I've been on that track, and really I think that what they are doing for the most part is just getting you into that machine where you work. I was working easily 16 hours a day, easily for years, on over 50% taxes because I lived in Manhattan. And oh yeah, over 50% taxes. And there's no like personal deduction in the beginning. Like they start just taking it all away. So like you are 50% of your money is gone. And it costs like 10 times as much to
It's
live
like
there.
China, I've done a lot of business with firework companies and electronic companies, and they pretty much take 50% of their profit.
Yeah, and that, right. So I always wonder, like, what good is the American dream, and why was the revolution even fought when we have really the same effective tax rates as all the other social democracies in the country? But I feel like they just put you in. I remember saying to my husband, like halfway through, this journey together, I was like, "Hey, man, every time you get a raise, you get pushed into a higher tax bracket. You work harder. We have to live closer to the city because you're never home, and." What's the point? Like we never saved any money for years and years until a little bit recently. And now we're gonna have to save it for retirement and kids going to college. You know what I mean? So it's not even like, oh, let's whatever, buy a condo in Hawaii, which is my ultimate dream. But it's
Nice.
that, you just had to. And I said, like, I think we'd be better off like moving to Idaho, And he's just like, what are you talking about? I've worked too hard, I've come too far. And like, you're not there yet. There's a lot. You those are sunk costs. And then and it happened again more recently. And he was just like, you might have had something there. This is a lot of hard work. And I feel like, but he enjoyed it. That's why it was important to me that he was going to enjoy it, because I knew he would be
Right.
doing it. Like I was going to do what I needed to do to raise those kids and stay interesting. I think a lot of the podcasting and stuff makes it, I want to have the respect of my family and in the world, because I want them to take seriously my opinions and what I say. I don't want them to believe me or follow me or anything, but I want to have some standing. And I feel like if your community respects you, your kids might have a little more, I don't know, think twice before they disrespect you.
I get it. And right now in this world, genuine people, who live and stand on their principles they're fleeting. I respect you because you do that. Chris Graves, all of the fellow podcasters that I'm involved with, been on their shows. They've been here. They're all very similar. Some of the podcasters that, bigger podcasters I listen to, right? Like David Knight, people like that. They are standing on their principles. I don't think any of them are doing this 100, for the money. I think just enough to keep everything running. Some of them in some cases, but they're doing it because they believe in what they're saying, and they want to help other people one way or the other. You're like fireworks. Fireworks is a labor of love. I've done wholesale, retail, public display, the whole gambit. And in the end, you know what it is, Monica? It's moving heavy cardboard boxes around by the thousands. By the time I'm done, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of pounds of fireworks I have
Really
moved in my career of fireworks, right? Which I'm no
Wow.
longer doing that. But
How do you have all your fingers?
yeah, no, yeah, I
Excellent.
know what I'm doing.
Excellent.
But the thing of it is it was a labor of love, right? That it wasn't. And I think when you find genuine people who do something and it's a labor of love, it's a rarity. And I think that's fleeting, because I think we're as a society, we're getting extremely shallow. We're losing our depth. We're about down to the knees here.
Well, I want to correct or elucidate what I was saying. And now that you mentioned that, I said I wanted to have some respect in the outside world and stuff like that. But as it happened, I actually, because when I did, like Chris was saying about the Boston Marathon bombing, it's true. Like I definitely got the attention of like feds and stuff because I was on the radio telling the truth about the Boston Marathon bombing, which is like a story for another day. But as I discovered these truths, because it was a call-in show, I had to always have the answers. I come up with such untouchable opinions that it's, my kids aren't always, we don't tell people I have a podcast.
Right. No, me too. Yeah, yeah. I get
So
where you're
I
coming
thought,
from.
like, as I was on the radio, I thought this is cool, that I'll be like a little celebrity. And funny enough, we kind of have to try to keep that separate because and I'm not saying that everybody in my house agrees with what I say. They respect me. They don't think I'm like crazy, but not everybody, like a lot of this stuff, if you have a political ideology that's inflexible, you don't want to hear facts that about the people you believe in,
Right.
like, so it wasn't what I expected. So I just wanted to clarify that.
No,
Although
I
the
got you. No.
motivation, it wasn't actually, definitely doesn't keep me going, because it has not been a net like, oh, look at mom, she's awesome. That
Right.
has
Right.
not always been the case.
No, no, and don't get me. No, please didn't. I hope you didn't take me the wrong way.
No,
No, no.
I just
And
want to be clear. I like
and
to
the
try to be
Harvard
clear.
thing, throwing that credential around is
Yeah,
excellent because it gives you weight. What you say,
that's right. Yeah.
listen, we need, this is the problem. What you and I say, okay, and I preach this on my thing. Now I get upset when I start thinking about this and I go off on tangents. So I'm not going to do that because you're here. But we get mixed up with stuff that I can't prove, like lizard people, like underground bases and weird stuff, like even into the religion stuff. I get that. I understand there's extreme connection. The symbolism, okay, people wearing masks, the Q-tards. I'm sorry, I don't like the Q thing. That was a
No, I'm
CIA
not a
mind
Q
psyop operation from the
Doesn't
beginning. I
Q
mean,
like Q level clearance, like the
yeah. It's a it was plain to
I
see these
know.
guys that are being led around. It's a psyop,
I
and they're
know,
talking.
because I was starting to wake people up on the radio. Like, I had these particular callers who would call and they would give me information, and it was so great. They were absolutely giving, big snaps when I would tell the truth about something like the Boston Marathon bombing or whatever. And all of a sudden they started calling with 60,000 indictments and adrenochrome. And I was like, keep your
Yeah,
eye
yeah,
on the
exactly.
ball. What are
Watermark
you
ballads
talking
and
about? Like, stop. Trust the plan.
and
It's
you know
just
what though? No, you know
no.
what? The grand poobah of conspiracy talk did not help that. He poured gasoline on that fire, and I
Oh,
did
of
not like that.
course. Of
I was
course.
I'm checking the water with you. I don't know your feelings on things, so I'm
Okay.
checking
Oh,
the
no,
water with you.
definitely oh, come on. I'm probably too far. I think Edward Snowden and Julian Assange are sketchy too.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Interesting. We must talk about this some other time.
No,
And
I
listen, real quick, we're not going to get into it because because of what you said, but we got to talk. If you'd like to one day, Chris Graves, you and I would love to talk about the Boston bombing. But as a fireworks guy, they
okay.
said that they used fireworks inside of a pressure cooker
Yeah.
and did this. Okay,
Oh,
I'm telling you
no,
right
I
now.
think the powers that be put fireworks in a garbage can and did this.
I'm telling you, you could put. I don't care what.
Sorry,
You
that's
could,
not funny. I don't know if it was. I'm not saying I never went down to like hoax thing with that. I don't know about that. I just know the story was not right.
you could have put fireworks in Bill Clinton's brass tuba for all I care, and they would not have done what that did.
Right.
That was a
Interesting.
high explosive. Fireworks are a low compound explosive. They can't shred stuff the way that stuff was shredded. I mean, they show you the pictures and the evidence and all that. That's not low compound explosive material right there. We used to go to classes how to build fireworks. I've built my own artillery shells and stuff that you launch in the air. So I know for a fact that even if they were using professional grade fireworks, that was not gonna so the Boston bombing thing, I'm glad that you actually got into that and you were on the radio and your radio station was good with that. That's unbelievable.
I know. That's what people that's why I had this one program director who was super old school, and it was the Boston Marathon bombing that we had a real like last minute emergency meeting, because I had the woman who she's one of my absolute best friends now. She was the one who discovered me, and she was my producer at the time. And I said, she didn't want me to come out and tell what I really thought about the Boston Marathon bombing. And I was like, you know what? I stayed up. I was filling in for somebody in prime time. I think like Erickson or somebody crazy like that. Like I had 400,000 listeners, and normally I had like 40,000. So I stayed up all night because I had callers. I had to get the answers. And this was when the scales fell from my eyes. So before that, I didn't even know 9/11 was an inside job.
Wow.
No, yeah, I didn't know.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yes.
So you're like,
Yeah,
you're rolled upside down. Tell me about, please
had
tell
to.
me about how this made you feel and all this other stuff. Go on.
Yeah, so I said, "No, I mean, I've been up all night. Like I found the pictures of this guy getting arrested. Like he was in the CIA and Tamerlan Tsarnaev. Like I have all of this. Like I'll tell you the documentation. I have pictures of him. Like I know what I know, and I've cracked the code. This is what my show is like. I'm cracking the code. I fucking cracked the code. And I was so nervous about getting on the radio because I would have to like answer calls. I was just so nervous that I did extra homework. I went to Harvard. I did extra homework, So I did all this homework and I was like, I have to come up with something other people haven't come up with. And I actually did. And she was like, you can't say that. I'm like, what do you mean I can't say it? I said, I wasn't even like, I'm only telling the truth. I was like, if I don't say that, I've got nothing to say. Like, this is my show. I can't not say it. This is the answer. I mean, I can't go on if it's not this. And it wasn't me like, I'm telling the truth. It was me having no other material but the truth. And she conferenced me in with the program director and she was like, Monica wants to go say this and people are going to run and scream. And he said, well, do you have good reasons for what you think? And I said, yeah. And he said, can you tell the difference between what you know and what you think what your opinion is? Like, can you distinguish and talk about the evidence? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, then go for it. He said, we don't want people running and screaming. So don't, scream and raise your hands in the air. But like, you can, if you bring it out slowly, you can do it. And we never look back, except for there were some things I wouldn't go nuts about 9/11 because too many people would just shut down. I lost many listeners when I even hinted, even privately, that I knew about 9/11. So I just didn't, because it was just going to ruin, I would just have half the audience and what's the point of that?
Right. No,
but towards the end, I did start talking about it. And that might be when I lost the job.
That is interesting. Well, that is, wow, what a story. Chris says, Tiger, the photo showed nothing was shredded.
Yeah.
Not even the banners directly in front of it. Dave McGowan pointed this out, and much more inconsistencies. Shepard Smith on Fox News said the explode. Yep. Yeah. And well, this is the thing, Chris. Yeah, I'm aware of that, but their initial excuse was that the explosives were fireworks. And if you put in a pressure cooker, and if you put explosives, if you put fireworks in a pressure cooker, it's not going to be able to when I said shred, I was my brain is like a river, right? And I'm picking the words out. Anyway, when I said shred, I mean, they would blow the lid off the thing at the worst. It's the fireworks are not burning at a rate fast enough to blow that thing apart. At best, they could blow the lid off of that thing. So any kind of decimation or destruction caused by the low compound explosive is impossible. That's what I was getting at.
And what about the level of destruction that is now attributed to fire? So fire can bring down trade centers. Fire could bring down I-85 in Atlanta. There's another highway supposedly collapsed because there was a fire underneath it. A fire. These things are forged in fire.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
I mean, they're in smelting pots. You have to like close it off because it cannot get open flame, cannot get that hot. And
then he points out that there's an explosion halfway up a building at the LensCrafter store on Boylston Street. The glass from the store was blown outwards. Now, right, I'm hip, man. Yeah, and he also goes on. I love Chris. He's like the detailed man.
Did somebody wind him up? We wound him up.
The pressure cookers were too big to even fit in them. That's another thing. And we're the wrong color. Yep. You're right. I just wanted to point out.
Oh, yeah. All that. Come on, Chris. That's basic. It's what my
I just wanted to point out how ludicrous it was from a firework man's point of view.
Yes.
To try to.
We'll have to. I've talked a lot about the Boston Marathon bombing, so my listeners have heard about it. But if you and Chris want to come and talk about, anything on my show that I love what I like from guests. Like, I don't need big time guests. I don't like to talk to the same person everybody else is talking to. So I like people who write articles and I like people who do research. So if you want to bring a deep dive to my show, you're welcome to
Excellent.
do it.
Excellent.
So let's
Maybe
figure
we-
something out with Chris and we'll do something cool.
That sounds good. Which one more thing I wanted to point out to our viewers that are not familiar with you, just in case. You again, like I said, you talk to other people with different opinions. You had an intelligent, discourse with them, and that is extremely beneficial, I think, and healthy. Because I think that if we pick a little bit of here, a little bit there, it was a small minority that started. And when I say revolution, I mean in thinking. Okay, the revolution, right? And we need a revolution in thinking here right now. But I don't think we have the critical mass that we need. We got to get a little bit closer. And I think if we could pull a couple from the left, they're not witches over there, right?
No,
They're not
I
gonna,
know.
right?
I want to reach over. That's why I like Jeremy Kuzmarov. And I was thinking what I really want to do. And so anybody who wants to make a suggestion of a particular person, somebody they think that I would be, kind of on a par with, who has an audience. I need somebody with an audience for this reason to do, once a week or once a month or whatever, a double show is you want the callers. So I would do calls. You want the callers to disagree with you.
Yes.
That's how you bridge that divide, is that if you can't have a lefty listen to something, a truthy thing where that their point of view is not represented. So you need to answer their questions. But if you don't know what their questions are, they're not going to get addressed and you're not going to convince them. It'll seem like straw man arguments. It'll seem like you're cherry picking so if you have
Right.
where everybody listening, like all these chats over here was like, yes, but Monica, didn't you think about this? If that was something you could put up on the screen right now, then we could actually change minds, or at least open minds to thinking.
Right.
And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. We want to build a community of people who are using their intellect, and a question for you. I have you here. I mean, because you're so smart. There's so many things I want to ask you, and I want to be careful not to waste my time with you, because time is our most valuable commodity.
Well, I love your thing. Do you do radio? You
No.
need to do voiceovers.
No, no, I'm a auto body mechanic and
Nice.
a regular mechanic. And yeah, I do a couple of side businesses, but no radio. I just started doing this in November, and it kind of I fell into it by accident. To be honest.
You'll have to tell me that story. And first, I have to tell you that my father had the first Texaco station in the city. It was a 24-hour thing in Little Italy on Carmine Street.
Oh, wow.
And it gave him 3 heart attacks. And so he had to sell it shortly before the gas crisis made all of his friends rich.
So again, if you mind me asking, you don't have to answer this. It was your father Italian?
No, but it was the Italian neighborhood. So man, if he didn't have tight lips, he'd probably be in concrete right now.
Yeah, being raised by Italians is an interesting thing.
I'm not Italian. I know I look it, but I'm not.
Right. No, I'm Italian 100%, but yeah, it's a different
Oh my
thing.
gosh. Hold on. Put up Chris Graves' last comment. I have to tell you what I thought that said. I honestly thought it said, Tiger is a porn bro. Like,
I'm glad it did not.
What the hell? I was like, Chris.
That would have been, yeah, that would have.
It looks like that. Sorry. So yes, tell me.
What was I going to say?
So
I don't know. That threw me off. Okay, so
I know. I'm sorry. I looked Italian, and it's weird being raised by Italians.
Yeah, it is. But okay. So really quick, are there stupid people in Harvard?
Are they stupid? I don't.
Are there people who are in Harvard who they're not? This is what I don't understand. Okay,
Oh,
I don't have a
yeah.
university education. How come a Harvard graduate who studied economics, who studied all this stuff, right? This really, I'm getting a little fired up right now. But they paid all this money, and I have no formal education, and I can understand that Keynesianism versus Austrian economics is a fantasy. It's not even real. It's a con game.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they get that?
My experience, and I think it explains a lot. I noticed when I started doing the show and my eyes were open, I went back and talked to my investment banking friends, and they're hard, I hardly have any now because we've parted ways so much. But I was telling one guy who I really thought would be under want to know, it's like, oh my gosh, like this, that, and the other thing. And he said, I work hard and I am rewarded. The system works as far as I'm concerned, and I don't want to know if it's bad. And it's that ethical glass ceiling, as my sister calls it, and John Updike's, it's hard to convince somebody if their wallet, their paycheck depends on them not being convinced. And so at Harvard, I would say I thought I would struggle. Like I thought I was going to be at the bottom, and I wasn't. So there were people who were smarter than I was and people who were not as smart. But uh, I would say, and my kids now went to private high school, which I did not. And like my son who has Down syndrome goes to the public. I have to say, there is a much higher caliber. I think it's the high schools, those private high schools that really are the difference makers, because
Right.
people were shocked at how I could graduate from Harvard. Like I knew some people, and I was in an international program when I was a banker, like it was Citibank. So it was like I knew people from all around the world. And they were just shocked at how little I knew about everything. And I was like, I only went to Harvard 2 years. I said, well, they shouldn't have given you a degree. But it was the people who went to those private high schools who really have the leg up and who were really, really above average in intelligence. However, they are trained to say what the people who are giving them grades or jobs want to
Don't get
hear.
mad at me.
Yeah.
Don't get mad, please. Okay, so they're in the layman segment, right? A population. I will say it. You don't have to be a genius to memorize things and pass tests. That's not that doesn't impress me. Doctors don't impress me. I mean,
Right.
you impress me, right? But you don't.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. But
You
they
get what I'm
do.
saying, and I don't mean that in a bad way at
But
all. Don't.
if you're learning the right thing, like they don't in these private schools, they'll still teach them Shakespeare and stuff. And why is that important? Because and like Greek mythology, which will
Classical education.
yes, and what it does
Yeah.
is you don't have to spend your life reinventing the wheel if things that have over 3,000 years been distilled as fundamental human characteristics, for example. Like Catholicism is like this. That's why a friend of mine at law school is like, you're Catholic and you can't handle law school. Like that's all Catholicism is. So you have these are fundamentals that it's so much easier to just learn them from someone who knows them than to have to figure them out over a lifetime.
No, you're right about that because that's where I went to federal prison. I started reading though. I always read and I always researched. And whether it was to make firecrackers when I was 12 years old, right, or
Right.
whether or how to make a BMX ramp, or how to do whatever to how do I make hash right out of cannabis, right?
Yes,
So
I
all,
understand.
for all, my whole life, I liked reading and I had a good reading comprehension level. So no matter what it was, I found out myself about it, right? I got a GED. I didn't make it past 10th grade. And then everything else is self-educated. But I went to prison, I read a lot, and then I became a history lover. And then I learned things through history. And then as you look at history, which many of these people who are in charge with these gigantic degrees, I'm not sure they do, you can learn so much stuff. You see it repeating itself over and over here. And, that's why the central banks is a big thing for me, because if you go back to their history, all the way into the mid 1300s in France, I think is where they started out. Even in our first central bank that, it was kicked out once, and then it had Andrew Jackson, they had to kick it out again. What they didn't, that's why the War of 1812 was fought over us not recertifying England's, our first central bank, which was an English bank, right? People thought it was fought over some stupid thing with Marines in the water and crap. No, that was fought over the banks. That's why that happened, because we would not recertify their central bank, which was
I
ran
did
by
not know
England.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I had
absolutely.
to catch up on my history, but you said that they don't learn, they don't know. Like, I feel like I can't think of a statesman in good faith, in our public arena right now. Like, I cannot think of anybody who you could say, well, you'll understand this better if you read history. You know, I used to like Justin Amash, whatever his name was.
Yeah, me too, but no, not anymore.
No, somebody must have gotten to him.
He found the horse's head in his bed.
I think so. I think so, because he used to post on his Facebook page the constitutional reason for every one of his congressional votes.
Wow.
And that in itself is a history book. And I mean, it was really the greatest single thing that was happening politically in this country. And he
What
was
about
just
Massey?
gone.
What do you think of Thomas?
I try not to be hard on him or Rand Paul or whatever who say things that seem compromising to me. I forget what it was where he lost me on a couple of things. And I was like, you know what? Rand Paul's a senator. His father never made it to be senator, like maybe
I don't trust Rand
compromising.
Paul because of his
'Cause-
links with the remdesivir and all that, and his wife, and
Oh,
there's a
maybe,
couple
yeah.
other things. I just, that
Well,
I love his dad, but
he lost me when he did some. This, I think, is a pattern with him. I kind of lost interest in like the actual nitty gritty of politics, but I recall with the USA Freedom Act, which to me was, I absolutely saw this coming with Snowden. I was like, okay, why is he there? He's there. Listen to what he's saying. What he's saying is what the government is doing is illegal, and we need to have this conversation. And so I said, oh, I'm right that he's like fake. If what we do is have the conversation and then pass a law that makes all that stuff legal, which is
Right.
what the USA Freedom Act was. So I predicted it 2 years in advance. I can probably find the tweets for you. And
nice.
And because I put hashtag WTWOF, what to watch out for, when I like make a prediction so I can search it quickly. So in any case, when that thing was, teetering on the edge of passing or not passing, I feel like Rand grandstanded and
That's the problem.
tried to said, I'm standing on principle, whatever. Same thing with like the TikTok act. There was a TikTok act, which was less bad than the one that's out there now, that actually banned TikTok. And he's like, no. So now there's something worse. And then the other thing, I feel like this thing with Fauci, his public dispute with Fauci about the lab leak theory. To me, that's like the LIHOP theory of 9/11. I don't know if you're familiar, like the let it happen on purpose. So the lab, they didn't actually do it. They just let it happen on purpose. Like the lab leak theory makes it seem like they didn't mean to spray the shit around the world.
Exactly. And another thing, he's throwing shade for them on the fact that the big thing that I don't like about that is, hey, we have these labs funded by the military industrial complex all over our country, all over the world, who are playing with these things that if they get out, and I know I'm putting this in a real dumbed down manner or a simple manner, but if they get out, they'll just wipe out humanity. Get some highly attainable anthrax, okay, and let that start working its way through the population. Who in the Sam Hill are these people to do that? They're the same people that lit the nitrogen bomb in the atmosphere when they thought it was a 50-50 chance and kill us all.
Have you read Ted Kaczynski?
What's that?
Yeah, I'm sure you haven't read Ted Kaczynski's Technological Slavery.
Absolutely, I have. I've read it. The whole thing. I've listened to it also. Don't get me going on Ted because I don't agree with what he did.
Of course.
The man was smart. And
this is what I'm going to say on this. He said the scientists who are doing some of this experimental stuff in their calculus is, I am going to live 85 years, then I'm going to die. I'm working on this project. If I succeed, I will be rich, famous, immortal in reputation. And if I fail and wipe out the universe, I will just have died at 45 instead of 85. They don't actually weigh the impact of wiping out the universe. You cannot weigh that impact in your individual decision. And I always thought that was interesting because he's like, look, there's a non-zero chance that somebody is doing something that devastating right now. A non-zero chance. That's all.
Yeah.
Non-zero chance. And weighed by the unacceptability of the outcome of wiping out the universe, a non-zero chance is just too much. See, of course, look at the results of what happens with your actions. If you take this action, this could happen or that could happen. If what could happen, the bad thing is super, super bad, right? Even if the odds are really, really low, I might die, right?
Why would I do that? Right. Or I might wipe out. Now, dying is one thing. Wiping out
Right.
the whole planet is a totally different thing. You're not
People
just
risk
messing
their
around with
lives for
yourself.
glory.
Yeah.
People risk their lives for glory all the time. But
So
but these guys, the glory that the risk they're taking is not their lives. They're not Evil Knievel. They're like Darth Vader.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader combined. Monica, unfortunately we're coming.
You're good. Right on
We're,
schedule.
yeah, we're coming to a close. We're probably going to be 2 minutes over schedule, but
That's
I want you to plug yourself. And listen, I need to talk to you again. There's a lot of stuff that I just want to run across you. Just talking with you is excellent. So
Just don't make me do homework until my move is finished.
Right. You got a move going on. No, yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, we got, it's life is busy, right? We got life.
I know, and I'm very excited because I've been renting, and I know I don't even know didn't really want to settle here in LA, but like one of my sons said, like you put so much into like the home and the family, like it needs to accrue to you. Like even our furniture is rented. Like this house we live in was furnished, and he's like, we live in an Airbnb. Like you have to have something of your own. So we're way downsizing, but it's not as good. I keep telling people like, oh, you're so excited about the house, mom. And I'm like, don't you get excited though, because it's half the size and it's like 100 years old and it's not going to be as good for you. And they're like, but it's cool, whatever. So
are you getting out of the city?
If
you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, it's still in LA County, but it is just, right up against the mountains. Mountains for LA, right up against the mountains. And to the point where if you ever see a video of like a bear in somebody's kitchen, it's
right
there. Like there's bees in the backyard. The neighbors have chickens. I have a little vineyard.
That's important.
Yeah, it's not a spread. It's definitely modest.
If you're familiar with Kaczynski, he talks about the power process, and I've taken.
Of course, I'm going to talk about that on my next deep dive.
What? Wow, that's awesome. I'm going to be listening on that one. But and I think I kind of modify a little bit. There's a lot of things that can be said about that philosophy, but you need to be plugged in, and the closer to nature you are, the more contentness you're going to have in your life. It's important. I think, but where can the good folks who already I got a bunch of your viewers in my YouTube, guys. Thanks for coming over. We got
plug yourself, Angry. May I call you Angry?
Yeah, absolutely. We got Joe Not a Fed, JC. I want to give him a shout out. That's important. We got Joe Not a Fed, JC.
And this was not with any warning. Like I just threw this up at the last minute. I didn't even know you could do it. It's like, do you want to broadcast this on YouTube? And I just clicked yes, and look at people were hopped right on.
Yeah, guys, welcome, and that's pretty cool.
I'll do that anytime. I love the live thing in the evening.
We got number 6 over on Rumble. We got Tom Cooper, who does a show with Chris Graves called Conspiring with Tom Cooper over there, and of course we got Chris Graves, and me and Chris were talking about. I'm just saying we were talking about doing a Unabomber special.
All right, so I'm going to do a deep dive. Somebody asked me to talk a little bit about it on Saturday, but we can definitely do a 3-way, as it were.
Nice. JC says she's seen your link on Twitter.
Perf.
Or JC, him or her, I'm not sure. Sorry. But okay, but yeah. So where can everybody find you?
JC's him. JB is her. What? Where can people find me? Deep Dives with Monica Perez is my latest work, and I think it might even have archives from my original Monica Perez show deep down in there in that feed. I'm not sure.
Nice.
But so you can find all of that. Has commercials, but on iTunes you can subscribe and not get the commercials, which is nice for me because I don't break even every month anymore. So that's great for me, but listening to commercials is great too. Rockfin.com/deep dives. And then if you want to pick and choose, search, get show notes and everything like that, go to monicasdeepdives.com.
Nice. Monica, thank you very much for coming on into the Tiger's Den and roaring for liberty the way you did. Nice. It was awesome. I am Angry Tiger. You can find me on all TNP platforms. You can find me on Rumble. You can find me on YouTube. It's called the Angry Tigers Den. And where else can you find me? On Substack, Angry Tigers Newsletter. So check it out. If you like what I do, throw a couple bucks my way and I will improve my setup and the better show I can produce for you. That's what we're looking to do there, ladies and gentlemen. And please like and share. If you're, for Monica too, sometimes even me, I watch podcasts and I forget. I'm watching David Knight.
Subscribe on iTunes. If you subscribe on
Yes.
iTunes, it pulls you up in the search engine. And I think that we should take up a collection for you, Angry Tiger, to get a Shure mic.
Nice.
Shure mic. It's $400. You need one.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we'll try to do that, Monica.
He needs $400. I never asked for anything. I never asked for anything, but he needs a new mic.
Nice.
This is
Well,
just
thank you,
a
Monica.
life-changing event is getting this. I got it for Christmas a couple of years ago for my husband, and it's just like the best thing.
Oh,
really
wow.
love it.
So, see something to aspire for. Thanks,
Yeah.
Monica. She does. She even, guys, get her on your show. She even does plugging for you. It's excellent.
I didn't mean to, but I just think, share the love here. That's what you need. Somebody needs something. Get it to a little barn raising for Angry's podcast.
Thanks. No, that's awesome. Thank you, Monica. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning into the Tiger's Den. And remember this, time is your most valuable commodity. Try not to waste it. Cherish it and use it wisely. Spend it doing something you love, with someone you love, or improving yourself, or preferably all three of those things. Ladies and gentlemen, until we meet again.
Knowledge by itself is not power. Your time is your most valuable commodity. Cherish it and use it wisely. Until we meet again.